Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. The Japanese markets right now have hit the limit of how negative they are. We have Warren Buffett calling the top of the stock market, and we even have other dangerous advisories from corporations that things are not bueno with the economy. Let's go and get started. Wednesday, there was a report about the interest rates in the United States. Remember that the United States is still by far the largest economy in the world, and the most important piece of that economy is almost 70% consumer spending. That means that the interest rates in the United States are one of the biggest pieces of information and important pieces of information for the economy, because if the interest rates are higher, then people can't spend as much money, which means that's 70% of the economy. If they start lowering them, we literally have been on a low interest rate binge since 2008, 2009, and there was a huge bubble that was created. And now when they raised the interest rates, that caused the bubble to, I don't want to say pop, but obviously things aren't going as well as they used to because people can't afford as many things because the interest rates are higher than they quote unquote need to be according to what they were before. So there was a meeting. They said that they're not going to drop the rates now, but since the inflation rate is continuing to lower, then they're probably going to do it in September. Thursday, the market absolutely plunged. There was weak employment information, manufacturing and construction data. The data pushed the 10-year Treasury below 4%. Huge fears now about investors in regards to a recession in the United States. And the U.S. manufacturing activity contracted for the fourth straight month. Friday, NASDAQ falls into correction territory. That basically means that, from the peak where it was at, it starts to come down. And after it's a certain percentage, that means that it's no longer going up anymore right now. Corporate earnings disappointed. Job growth is starting to slow sharply. Unemployment rate is at its highest since the last 3 years, 4.3%. And there's a lot of evidence that the labor market is weakening and the country most likely be heading into a recession. And tech giant Intel had its worst day on record. I think I had mentioned that Warren Buffett kind of called the top with his actions, right? I'll get into that in just a moment too. All the stocks in the United States were negative. The S&P 500, I think I said the NASDAQ, so let me correct myself. The NASDAQ is entering almost into a correction, but the S&P 500 is 4% in the correction already. The Communist Republic of Canada, they were negative 2.46% as well. Conspiracy and some crazy news. Heart disease risk has skyrocketed 13,200% since the things in your arm from the pandemic, admits the CDC. So there's an official number for you. And the FDA, which is another health department in the United States, is granting emergency use authorization for the mRNA bird flu things in your arm as well, just like what happened with the pandemic. So prepare for pandemic 2.0. And one of the things about inflation that I thought was really interesting is in the 90s, if your parents or somebody you knew made $80,000 a year, that same amount of money today would be $245,000, which would imply about over a 10% inflation rate since the 90s until now. So that means that in order to make the same amount of money at $80,000 in the 90s, you would need to be making $245,000 now to be able to have the same life, which most people are not. That's not the difference that they're making. And in the Olympic news and some other crazy news, after defeating all biological women, the finals in the women's Olympic boxing match is going to feature 2 biological men who identify as women. I'm just reporting the news, guys. Overseas market news. European markets were mostly lower. Italian markets were the biggest loser there. Latin American markets were also lower. The Brazilian Bovespa, which is the largest market in Latin America, went down 1.30%. Africa and the Middle East was mixed. And then the far east, Asia, Australia, mostly lower. The Nikkei in Japan went down almost 5% for the week. They literally went down 5% as I'm recording this video. Sunday night, which is their Monday morning. And they hit the limit. They shut down the trading in the Japanese stock exchange. We also supposedly are preparing for a war because the United States and Israel have been reporting about a major attack from Iran on Israel. They are talking about a coordinated effort with other countries in the Middle East due to the fact that Israel planted a bomb inside one of the, if not the most secure military base in Iran to kill the leader of Hamas, which now obviously there's a new leader, but you know what I mean. So they literally were able to plant the bomb 2 months in advance to wait for this moment to be able to kill the leader of Hamas in the most secure building where they take the VIPs in Iran. So that's going to be the retaliation for that. Commodities and energy. Oil fell to its lowest price levels in nearly 7 months on Friday. This has to do with the demand, the expectation that maybe China now, which is the largest importer of oil in the world, is not going to be as high as before, in addition to the demand from the United States. U.S. crude went down almost 5% to 73.52. Brent, which is the international crude, went down over 5.60%, 76.81. And cacao prices now are at a 5-month low due to demand destruction. Hershey actually posted their numbers, and there's a lot of expectation now that consumers they don't even have money to buy chocolate anymore because the price of chocolate has gone up so high due to the cacao. Cacao is the fruit from the tree that they make chocolate out of. And gold, another record high, 2,500. Obviously, it pulled back. This was the expectation of the lowering of the interest rates. Gold for the week went up 2.38% to 2,444, while silver went up 2.35% to 28.66. It didn't get down to about 27 and change. Remember, I told you guys I expected it to go into that range, so we'll see if it actually stays there or not because of what's going on with the news. If there's a bigger war that breaks out with Iran, obviously that's going to completely change the dynamic. It'll probably go up quite a bit. And in financial and banking news, the New York commercial real estate. There's a building that sold at a 97.5% discount. It was only 35% full. And this, in my opinion, is one of the next economic bombs that can actually explode very soon. The reason why is because after the pandemic, now companies aren't using commercial real estate anymore. So imagine our entire financial system, most of the banks giving out hundreds of millions of dollars to build these commercial towers where corporations use them as offices. And now, where that building before, let's say, was $100 million, it's literally selling at a few million at a 97% discount because nobody wants offices anymore. So every single bank that has borrowed money for commercial properties, every single bank literally is going to have the potential to fail because the loan that they gave for all these buildings, now they're taking a 97% loss because they can't sell them at the price that they were before. Bank of England Thursday delivered its first interest rate cut in over 4 years. The key rate is at 5%. The last time they were at this level, it was in 2008. And the U.S. average 30-year fixed mortgage dropped 22 basis points on Friday, the lowest rate since April 2023. The 15-year mortgage went down to 5.89%, the lowest since May 2023. So remember, if the U.S. economy is based on almost 70% consumer spending, which is based on the interest rates, if this goes down quite a bit, it's going to help the housing market, which is about 18% of the economy. So right there between two things, we have 70 plus, let's say 20. We're looking at about 87% of the economy, just between those two things. Economic news, the Eurozone collectively grew at 0.3%, so they're not quite in a recession just yet, even though Germany, which is the largest economy in the Eurozone, third largest economy in the world, has walked into a recession. Spain, Italy, Ireland all posted positive results in the last quarter, which was quarter two, while Latvia, Sweden, and Hungary, Latvia is a little country kind of northeast of Germany, by the way, they contracted the last quarter. Political news, Kamala Harris has declined the debate with Trump. Venezuela President Maduro has said that he won the election, even though there's obviously rampant fraud. I'd like you to compare the election results in Venezuela, which what happened in, I believe it was Wisconsin or Michigan. And one of the things that's really interesting, and I think this is a big learning point, they started voting for socialism in Chavez. It was about 40 years ago or so. And now they have an 80% poverty rate, when before they were one of the richest countries in the world. On top of that, just to note that Venezuela is sitting on the largest oil reserves in the world. So literally a country that has so much potential that could literally be Panama or Dubai because of the oil revenue that they can make, are literally sitting on 80% poverty because they started voting for socialism. So keep that in mind. Texas can maintain a 1,000-foot floating long barrier along the Rio Grande, said a court. Before they said they couldn't, but now they said that they could because President Biden sued the state of Texas to obviously keep the border open. In corporate news, FedEx. Remember that FedEx is one of the largest shipping companies in the world. They now are contracting or cutting their domestic flights in the United States by 60%. They've already achieved a $1.8 billion reduction in costs, and they want to do another $2.2 billion in savings by 2025. So now one of the largest and the kind of the bellwether of the shipping industry, let's say, at least when it comes to domestic, not things like cargo and boats, they're cutting 60% of their flights, which means that a lot of corporations and companies, people are not shipping stuff anymore, which means that the economy isn't doing as well anymore. You see how that works? The Big Mac demand as well at McDonald's, the first time that the same store sales have went down since 2020 in the pandemic. They went down by 1%, another warning flag. And Berkshire Hathaway, their cash piles swelled to almost $277 billion after Berkshire Hathaway sold half of his massive stake in Apple, also reduced his stake in Bank of America. This is what I always tell you. Pay attention to what they do, not what they say. When the largest and most successful investor in history has been selling stocks for 7 quarters, that means that's almost 2 years, we're probably at a top. So that's, I think Warren Buffett marked the top here. Chevron, one of the largest oil companies in the world, is officially leaving California after 145 years in the once capitalist republic. Now it's a socialist republic. They're leaving for Texas. This is going to be a big blow. There's other companies that are leaving as well. For example, SpaceX. They're already in a financial bind, and they're probably going to have an even bigger problem now. And Tesla shares went up almost 6% after they were crowned the top U.S. auto pick by Morgan Stanley. Their stock is up over 14% in the last 3 months, but it's down 16% in 2024. JetBlue, their shares soared 12% on positive earnings. Rolls-Royce, the high-end luxury car maker, they're also involved in a lot of jet engines and military equipment. They surged over 11% on good earnings. They hit a record high. And Shake Shack, one of the best hamburgers in the United States, went up. Although you guys don't know how good you have it. Living here in Colombia, one of the things I miss is some of those hamburgers. Although there's really good food here too, in Medellin anyway. Not places like Cartagena. Shake Shack went up by almost 17% after their revenue topped estimates as well. And Intel, one of the largest chip makers and used to be the world largest chip maker. They have been beaten by AI rivals in recent years. They had their worst day in history in 150 years, the worst day in 50 years, Amazon was down 9% on earnings news as well. And there was another hack. Microsoft was hit with another outage. People were unable to get into emails, Xbox Live, and 365 functions. You guys aren't noticing what's happening, right? They just had the sabotage with the trains in France during the Olympics. There was another attack on the fiber optic cables in France as well. The CrowdStrike problem where, airlines were stranded. That was a quote-unquote software glitch after an update. Now, Microsoft, you see how all this stuff is happening? Prepare yourself because the preppers were right. Remember, where's my button? Hello. Trade news, South Korea. Their exports rose for the 6th month straight in July. They're the 11th largest exporter in the world, 14th largest exporter, or 14th largest economy in the world, And in investment news, the U.S. Security, The U.S. Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, emphasized that we need to invest $3 billion into the climate transition to be on low carbon energy. One of the things that was fascinating this week on the interesting facts is they found a They found the rocks on the seabed floor that don't receive any sun at all create oxygen. They're calling it dark oxygen. So normally it was thought that plants created oxygen. They needed to receive sun, but now there's rocks literally in the bottom of the ocean that get zero sun that are creating oxygen. Isn't that amazing? I thought that was really interesting. And according to the Private Wealth Migration Report by Henley, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, is going to be the top wealth magnet for the third year in a row. The UK, which used to be one of the billionaire hotspots, they are going to drop the millionaire population by 17% in 2008. And I don't know if you guys have been seeing some of the cities in London. There's literally a war zone going on. No cops, just people in hoods. You know, I saw one video where there was a white guy just getting like stabbed to death, just stabbed with sticks, just really bad. And a raging California wildfire swelling to the 5th largest in the history of the state. And there was a death of a Ebola-like disease in Spain where the guy was bleeding out of his eyes. And remember, Ebola has a 50% mortality rate. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, the preppers are right.